Captain Marcus Kane gripped the controls of his dying ship as alarms screamed through the cramped cockpit. The navigation console sparked and died, leaving him blind in the vast emptiness of space. 3 weeks into what should have been a routine cargo run to the outer colonies, his ship had suffered a cascade failure that left him drifting toward an uncharted system. The fuel reserves were nearly gone, and life support would fail within hours. Marcus had already sent out every distress signal he could manage, but the nearest human outpost was light years away. He was preparing to accept his fate when something impossible appeared on his failing sensors. A massive vessel, unlike anything in human space, materialized beside his tiny freighter. The ship was elegant and organic-looking, with flowing curves that seemed to pulse with an inner light. Before Marcus could react, a tractor beam locked onto his vessel and drew him into a cavernous docking bay. The atmosphere inside the alien ship was breathable, though slightly thick and humid. Marcus stepped out of his ship to find himself surrounded by beings he had never seen before. They were tall and graceful, with pale blue skin that seemed to shimmer in the strange lighting. Their faces were angular but beautiful, with large eyes that held an intelligence both ancient and alien. The beings spoke in musical tones that his universal translator struggled to interpret. From what he could understand, he was aboard a Zephyrian vessel, and they were as surprised to encounter a human as he was to meet them. The tension in the air was palpable as armed guards kept their weapons trained on him. A commotion erupted from deeper within the ship. Shouts and what sounded like weapons fire echoed through the corridors. The Zephyrians around Marcus immediately went on high alert, their musical language becoming sharp and urgent. Through the chaos, Marcus heard something that made his blood run cold, screams of pain and terror. Without thinking, Marcus pushed past the confused guards and ran toward the sound. His military training from his younger days kicked in as he navigated the alien corridors. The Zephyrians shouted behind him, but he ignored them. Someone was in trouble, and every instinct told him to help. He rounded a corner to find a scene of carnage. Armored figures with blood-red insignias were attacking the Zephyrians with brutal efficiency. These weren't Zephyrians. They were something else entirely, with darker skin and predatory features. The attackers moved with savage grace, cutting down the elegant aliens with weapons that seemed to burn rather than cut. In the center of the chaos, Marcus saw her. A young Zephyrian female, clearly important from her ornate clothing, was backed against a wall. Her guards lay dead around her, and 3 of the red-armored attackers were advancing on her with cruel laughter. She was wounded, pale blue blood streaming from a gash on her arm, and her large eyes were wide with fear and defiance. Marcus didn't hesitate. He grabbed a fallen Zephyrian weapon from the floor and threw himself into the fight. The weapon felt strange in his hands, but desperation guided his movements. He managed to catch the first attacker by surprise, the alien weapon's energy beam burning through the creature's armor. The other 2 turned on him with snarls of rage. They were faster and stronger than any human, but Marcus had something they didn't expect: unpredictability. He fought with the desperate creativity of someone with nothing to lose, using the alien ship's architecture to his advantage. During the brutal fight, Marcus took a savage blow across his chest that left him bleeding heavily, but he managed to wound one attacker severely enough that both retreated, dragging their injured companion with them. As they fled, one shouted something in their harsh language that his translator couldn't parse. Marcus collapsed against the wall, his human blood mixing with the alien gore on the floor. The young Zephyrian approached him cautiously, her wound forgotten. She knelt beside him and spoke in accented but clear human language. "You saved my life," she said, her voice like wind chimes. "But you are badly hurt. We must get you to our medical bay immediately." As Zephyrian medics arrived and began treating both of them, Marcus learned that he had just saved Princess Lyrelai, heir to the Zephyrian throne. The attackers were Korthak raiders, a savage species that had been terrorizing Zephyrian space for months. But as the medical team worked on his wounds, Marcus noticed something strange. His blood seemed to have an unusual effect on the Zephyrians who came into contact with it. Their own wounds healed faster, and their pale skin took on a healthier glow. The princess's injury, which had seemed severe, was already beginning to close. The ship's doctor, an elderly Zephyrian with intricate markings on his skin, examined Marcus with growing excitement. He spoke rapidly to Princess Lyrelai in their musical language. gesturing at Marcus's blood samples. "Dr. Valeth says your blood has properties we have never seen before," the princess translated, her eyes wide with wonder. "It appears to have extraordinary healing capabilities, not just for your own species, but for ours as well." Marcus felt a chill of apprehension. He had always healed quickly from injuries faster than other humans, but he had never thought much of it. Now, surrounded by aliens in the depths of space, he realized that his unusual biology might have just changed everything. As the Zephyrian ship altered course toward their homeworld, Marcus had no idea that his act of heroism and the discovery of his unique blood would soon make him the most valuable and hunted being in the galaxy. The princess sat beside his medical bed, studying him with an expression he couldn't read, and he began to wonder if saving her life had been a blessing or a curse. The Zephyrian homeworld of Ethermere hung before them like a jewel against the starfield. Marcus pressed his face to the observation window, marveling at the planet's swirling silver and blue clouds. Crystalline cities rose from floating islands that drifted through the upper atmosphere, connected by bridges of pure energy that sparkled in the alien sunlight. Princess Lyreley stood beside him, her presence both comforting and unsettling. Over the 3-day journey, she had barely left his side, claiming she needed to monitor his recovery. But Marcus suspected there was more to her attention than medical concern. The way she looked at him had changed since the discovery of his blood's properties. "My people have waited centuries for something like this," she said quietly, her melodic voice tinged with something Marcus couldn't identify. "Our greatest scientists have searched the galaxy for a cure to the withering plague that slowly kills our species. And here you are, a human whose blood might hold the key to our survival." Marcus felt his stomach tighten. "What exactly is this plague?" The princess's expression grew sad. "It began 50 years ago. Our people simply started fading. Our natural healing abilities weakened, our lifespans shortened, our birth rates dropped. We estimate that without intervention, the Zephyrian race will be extinct within 2 centuries. Before Marcus could respond, the ship shuddered as it entered the planet's atmosphere. The pilot's voice echoed through the corridors in musical Zephyrian, and the princess straightened, her demeanor shifting from vulnerable to regal. "We are approaching the royal palace," she said. "My mother, Queen Seraphine, is eager to meet you." The landing platform was a marvel of alien engineering, a disk of crystalline material that floated freely in the air. As they disembarked, Marcus was surrounded by Zephyrian guards in ceremonial armor that gleamed like captured starlight. The princess walked beside him, but he noticed that the guards' formation was more like an escort for a prisoner than an honor guard. The palace itself took Marcus's breath away. Towers of living crystal grew from the floating platform, their surfaces pulsing with soft light that seemed to breathe with the rhythm of the planet itself. Gardens of alien plants with leaves like metallic silk cascaded down the walls, and the air hummed with an energy that made his skin tingle. Queen Seraphine waited for them in the throne room, a vast chamber with walls that seemed to be made of solidified music. She was tall and imposing, her skin a deeper blue than her daughter's with intricate silver markings that spoke of age and wisdom. Her eyes, ancient and calculating, fixed on Marcus the moment he entered. "So this is the human who saved my daughter's life," the queen said, her voice carrying harmonics that resonated in Marcus's bones, "and whose blood may save us all." Marcus bowed respectfully, but the queen's next words made him straighten in alarm. "You will remain here as our honored guest while our scientists study your unique properties," she declared. "The potential you represent is too valuable to allow you to leave." "With all due respect, Your Majesty," Marcus said carefully, "I appreciate your hospitality, but I have obligations in human space. People are expecting me to complete my cargo run." The Queen's expression didn't change, but the temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. "I'm afraid that's impossible. The greater good of the Zephyrian people must take precedence over your personal concerns." Princess Lyreley stepped forward, her face troubled. "Mother, perhaps we could reach some kind of arrangement." "Silence, Lyreley," the Queen snapped. "This matter is beyond your understanding. Guards, escort our guest to his quarters. He is not to leave the palace grounds." As the guards moved to surround him, Marcus felt a surge of panic. He had gone from savior to prisoner in the span of minutes. The princess caught his eye and gave him an almost imperceptible shake of her head, as if warning him not to resist. His quarters turned out to be luxurious beyond anything he had ever experienced. The room was carved from a single enormous crystal, with furniture that seemed to grow from the floor itself. A balcony overlooked the floating gardens, but Marcus quickly discovered that an invisible energy barrier prevented him from leaving that way. Dr. Valeth arrived within the hour, accompanied by a team of Zephyrian scientists carrying equipment Marcus didn't recognize. The elderly alien's enthusiasm was infectious, but Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that he was being studied like a laboratory specimen. The initial tests are remarkable, Dr. Valeth explained, as he drew blood samples. Your cellular structure contains compounds we've never seen before. When introduced to Zephyrian tissue affected by the withering plague, your blood actually reverses the degradation. That's great, Marcus said, trying to keep his voice steady. But how much blood do you need? Surely a few samples would be enough to synthesize whatever compounds you're interested in. The doctor exchanged glances with his assistants. I'm afraid it's not that simple. The healing properties seem to be tied to your living biology. Synthesized versions lose their potency within hours. We would need regular donations. The way he said regular donations made Marcus's blood run cold. How regular? The Queen has authorized daily extraction of 2 liters, Dr. Valeth said matter-of-factly. Don't worry, we'll supplement your diet to help with blood production. 2 liters daily would leave him weak and anemic, barely able to function. Marcus realized with growing horror that the Zephyrians weren't planning to study his blood. They were planning to farm it. That evening, Princess Lyrelei visited him in his quarters. She dismissed the guards with a royal gesture and sat across from him, her expression troubled. I didn't know what my mother was planning, she said quietly. When I brought you here, I thought you would be honored as a hero, not imprisoned as a resource. Can you help me escape? Marcus asked directly. The princess was quiet for a long moment. The penalty for helping a royal prisoner escape is death, even for me. And where would you go? This entire system is under Zephyrian control. Marcus slumped in his crystal chair. He was trapped on an alien world, about to become a living blood bank for a dying race. As he looked out at the beautiful but alien landscape, he wondered if saving the princess had been the biggest mistake of his life. But as Princess Lyrelei continued to visit him over the following days, Marcus began to sense that despite her words, she was planning something. The question was whether he could trust her, or if this was just another layer to his imprisonment. Marcus had been the Queen's unwilling guest for 2 weeks, and the daily blood extractions were taking their toll. Despite the supplements Dr. Valeth provided, he felt constantly dizzy and weak. His skin had taken on a pale, unhealthy color that reminded him uncomfortably of the withering plague affecting the Zephyrians. The irony wasn't lost on him that while his blood was healing an entire alien race, the extraction process was slowly killing him. Dr. Valeth assured him that the amounts being taken were perfectly safe, but Marcus could feel his body struggling to keep up with the demand. Princess Lyrelei continued her daily visits, and Marcus had begun to notice subtle changes in her behavior. She asked careful questions about human space, about faster-than-light travel, and about the locations of human colonies. At first, he assumed she was simply curious about his species, but gradually he realized she was gathering intelligence. The Korthak raids have increased, she mentioned during one visit, her tone deliberately casual. They seem to know exactly where our ships will be, as if they have inside information about our patrol routes. Marcus looked up from his meal, one of the few activities that didn't leave him exhausted. You think there's a spy among your people? Perhaps, she said, but her eyes suggested she suspected something more complicated. Or perhaps they have other sources of information. That night, Marcus was awakened by the sound of fighting in the corridors outside his quarters. Energy weapon fire lit up the crystal walls, and he could hear the musical shouts of Zephyrian guards mixed with the harsh battle cries of the Korthak raiders. His door, usually sealed by an energy lock, suddenly slid open. Princess Lyrelei stood in the entrance, dressed in dark clothing and carrying 2 weapons. Her royal composure was gone, replaced by grim determination. They're here for you, she said urgently. The Korthak know about your blood's properties. Someone told them. How is that possible? Marcus struggled to his feet, the sudden movement making him dizzy. Because my mother has been negotiating with them in secret, Lyrelei said, her voice bitter. She's been using your blood to heal our people, but she's also been trading samples to the Korthak in exchange for them stopping their raids on our outer colonies. Marcus felt sick, and not just from the blood loss. She's been selling my blood to those murderers? The Korthak have their own uses for healing properties, the princess said, handing him one of the weapons. They've been using it to enhance their warriors, making them stronger and more resilient. But now they want the source, and they want you. The sound of combat was getting closer. Marcus could hear the distinctive energy signatures of Korthak weapons, weapons designed to cause maximum pain rather than clean death. "Why are you helping me?" Marcus asked as they moved toward the balcony. Princess Lyrelay paused, her alien features softening for a moment. "Because what my mother is doing is wrong. You saved my life freely, without asking for anything in return. You deserves to be treated as a hero, not a commodity to be traded." She activated a device that dissolved the energy barrier around the balcony. Below them, the floating gardens provided a maze of hiding places, but Marcus could also see Korthak warriors moving through the greenery like predators hunting prey. "There's a service tunnel that leads to the docking bays," Lyrelay explained as they climbed down using energy ropes. "Your ship has been repaired and refueled, if we can reach it." They dropped into the garden just as a squad of Korthak raiders rounded the corner. The aliens were even more intimidating up close than Marcus remembered. Their blood-red armor was covered in trophies taken from their victims, and their weapons hummed with barely contained violence. The lead warrior spotted them immediately and let out a roar that sounded like grinding metal. Energy bolts seared through the air around them as Marcus and Lyrelay dove for cover behind a crystalline sculpture. "This way." Lyrelay grabbed his hand and pulled him deeper into the garden maze. They ran through paths lined with alien plants that seemed to glow with their own light. Behind them, the Korthak warriors crashed through the delicate vegetation, their heavy armor making stealth impossible. Marcus's weakened condition meant he couldn't run for long, and soon he was gasping for breath. "I can't keep this pace," he wheezed, leaning against a wall of living crystal. Lyrelay looked back at their pursuers and made a decision. "Give me your weapon and keep going. The tunnel entrance is just ahead. Look for the blue marker stone. I'm not leaving you to fight them alone." "You're in no condition to fight," she said firmly. "And if they capture you, everything we've done will be meaningless. Go." Marcus wanted to argue, but the sound of approaching Korthak warriors convinced him. He stumbled forward through the garden until he found the blue stone she had mentioned. A hidden panel slid open, revealing a narrow tunnel that led downward into darkness. Behind him, he could hear the sound of energy weapons as Princess Lyrelay engaged the Korthak raiders. The musical tone of Zephyrian weapons mixed with the harsh buzz of Korthak guns, creating a deadly symphony in the night air. Marcus crawled through the tunnel as fast as his weakened body would allow. The passage was clearly designed for maintenance workers, not fleeing prisoners, and he scraped his hands and knees on the rough crystal surfaces. He emerged in the docking bay to find his ship exactly where Lyrelay had promised. But as he climbed into the pilot's seat, he realized he faced a new problem. The Zephyrian flight control systems were active, and launching without permission would trigger the automated defense systems. Through the cockpit window, he could see explosions in the floating gardens above. The princess was still fighting, but she was outnumbered and wouldn't be able to hold them off much longer. Marcus made a decision that went against every survival instinct he possessed. Instead of trying to escape immediately, he activated his ship's weapon systems and targeted the Korthak vessels that were landing around the palace. If Princess Lyrelay was risking her life to save him, the least he could do was provide covering fire. His first shot caught a Korthak transport ship by surprise, the energy beam punching through its armor and causing a spectacular explosion. The second shot disabled the landing gear of another vessel, sending it crashing into the palace's lower levels. Alarms began screaming throughout the docking bay as the automated defense systems came online. Marcus realized he had perhaps 30 seconds before the palace's weapons would target his ship. But as he prepared to launch, a familiar figure appeared at the docking bay entrance. Princess Lyrelay ran toward his ship, her clothes torn and her weapon depleted. Behind her, 3 Korthak warriors emerged from the tunnel, their weapons already charging for the killing shot. Marcus didn't hesitate. He swung his ship's weapons toward the Korthak warriors and fired, the energy beams turning the tunnel entrance into molten crystal and slag. Princess Lyralee dove through the resulting chaos and scrambled aboard his ship, just as the palace's automated defenses locked onto their position. "Go, go, go," she shouted, throwing herself into the co-pilot seat. Marcus pushed the engines to maximum power and launched them through the docking bay's energy barrier, just as defensive turrets began tracking their movement. The ship shuddered under several hits, but the human-built hull proved surprisingly resilient against Zephyrian weapons. As they climbed away from the floating palace, Marcus could see the full scope of the Korthak attack. At least a dozen raider ships were engaged in battle with the Royal Guard, and several sections of the beautiful crystal structure were already in flames. "Your mother's deal with the Korthak didn't work out very well," Marcus said grimly as he navigated between energy blasts. Princess Lyralee's expression was haunted. "She thought she could control them, use them as a tool to protect our people." She never understood that the Korthak see every species as either prey or rivals. There is no negotiating with them. A Korthak interceptor appeared on their starboard side, its pilot apparently more interested in capturing them than destroying them. Marcus recognized the tactic. They wanted him alive so they could harvest his blood themselves. "Can you handle the weapons?" Marcus asked as he threw the ship into an evasive spiral. "Human weapon systems are different from ours," Lyralee replied, studying the unfamiliar controls, "but the principle should be similar." She managed to score a hit on the interceptor's engine section, causing it to fall back, but two more ships moved to take its place. Marcus realized that his weakened condition was affecting his piloting. His reactions were slower than usual, and the blood loss was making him lightheaded. "I need to get us out of the atmosphere," he said, fighting to stay conscious. "But those ships are faster than us." Princess Lyralee looked at the tactical display, her alien features tight with concentration. "There's an asteroid field at the edge of this system. If we can reach it, we might be able to lose them in the debris." Marcus adjusted their course, pushing the ship's engines beyond their recommended limits. Behind them, the Korthak ships maintained their pursuit, occasionally firing warning shots that came uncomfortably close to their hull. As they approached the asteroid field, Marcus felt his vision starting to blur. The combination of stress, blood loss, and exhaustion was finally overwhelming his human physiology. His hands began to shake on the controls. "I can't," he started to say, then collapsed forward over the console. Princess Lyralee caught him before he could hit the controls and pulled him back into his seat. For a moment, her hands glowed with a soft blue light, and Marcus felt some of his strength return. It wasn't much, but it was enough to clear his vision. "I didn't know your people could do that," he said weakly. "It's a royal bloodline trait," she explained, taking over the pilot controls with surprising skill. "We can share our life energy with others, though it weakens us in the process. I've been studying your ship systems during your imprisonment, human. Technology is more intuitive than I expected." She piloted them into the asteroid field with a grace that made Marcus realize she was far more than just a sheltered princess. The Korthak ships followed, but the dense debris made their larger vessels less maneuverable. There, Lyralee pointed to a massive asteroid with what looked like artificial structures on its surface. "That's an old mining station. If it still has power, we might be able to hide there while you recover." As they approached the derelict station, Marcus noticed something troubling. "Those aren't Zephyrian markings on the hull." Princess Lyralee's expression grew tense. "No, they're not. This was a joint operation between multiple species, including humans. It was abandoned during the Korthak expansion 20 years ago. The station's docking bay still functioned, though barely." As they settled into the ancient berth, Marcus could see that the facility had been hastily evacuated. Personal belongings and equipment were scattered throughout the corridors, as if the workers had fled in panic. "We need to find the medical bay," Lyralee said, helping Marcus out of the ship. "Your condition is worse than I initially realized." They made their way through the dimly lit corridors, following signs in multiple languages including Human Standard. The artificial gravity was weak and inconsistent, making movement difficult for Marcus in his weakened state. The medical bay was a revelation. It contained equipment from a dozen different species, including several human-built diagnostic machines. Princess Lyralee studied the various devices with fascination, while Marcus collapsed onto what appeared to be a universal treatment table. "This is incredible," she murmured, activating a medical scanner. "Look at this data. Your blood isn't just healing. It's actually adapting to whatever biological system it encounters. The compounds change their structure based on the needs of the host organism." Marcus tried to focus on what she was saying, but exhaustion was pulling him toward unconsciousness. "What does that mean?" "It means you're not just immune to the withering plague. Your blood could potentially cure diseases we haven't even discovered yet. But more than that, it suggests your species has encountered and adapted to threats that ours never have." Before Marcus could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the station. Through the medical bay's viewport, they could see Korthak ships approaching the asteroid field, their sensors actively scanning for their prey. "They're persistent," Marcus said, forcing himself to sit up. Princess Lyreli checked the station's defensive systems and shook her head. "The shields are offline and the weapons are depleted. We're sitting ducks here." "Not necessarily," Marcus said, an idea forming despite his exhaustion. "This is a mining station. That means they would have had explosive charges for breaking up asteroids." Understanding dawned on the princess's face. "You want to destroy the station?" "I want to make it look like we died in an explosion while actually escaping in the chaos," Marcus corrected. "But first, I need you to understand something important. The reason my blood has these properties, it's not natural." Lyreli turned to face him fully, her large eyes intent. "What do you mean?" "Humans have been fighting a secret war for the past century," Marcus said quietly, "against something that makes the Korthak look like children playing with toys. My blood carries antibodies and adaptations from that conflict. If the Korthak get their hands on me, they won't just become stronger, they'll become something much worse." The weight of this revelation settled between them as the Korthak ships drew closer to their hiding place. Princess Lyreli realized that the stakes were far higher than just her people's survival or one human's freedom. Marcus carried within him the key to evolutionary advantages that could tip the balance of power in the galaxy. And now, they had to ensure that those advantages never fell into the wrong hands. Princess Lyreli stared at Marcus with a mixture of fear and fascination. "What kind of war? Against whom?" Marcus struggled to his feet, using the medical equipment for support. "The official records call them the Devourers. They appeared at the edge of human space 50 years ago. Creatures that consume biological matter and incorporate it into themselves. Every battle we fight, they learn from. Every species they encounter, they absorb." "That's impossible," Lyreli whispered. "We would have detected such a threat. They stay in the dark spaces between systems," Marcus explained, checking the station's explosive inventory on a nearby terminal. "They're patient, methodical. They test each species they find, probe for weaknesses. By the time most civilizations realize they're under attack, it's too late." The princess helped him access the mining charges, her hands shaking slightly. "And your blood?" "Humanity's genetic engineers developed a treatment that makes us toxic to the Devourers. Anyone who receives the modification can't be consumed or absorbed. The treatment also has side effects: enhanced healing, disease resistance, cellular regeneration. It's mandatory for anyone who might encounter the Devourers." Lyreli's face went pale. "The withering plague. The timeline matches. Could it be?" "A Devourer probe," Marcus confirmed grimly. "A biological agent designed to weaken your species before the main invasion. Your people's natural healing abilities would have made you resistant initially, but the plague was designed to erode those defenses over time." Through the station's sensors, they could see the Korthak ships had found their hiding place. Boarding pods were already launching toward the asteroid. "We need to move," Marcus said, loading the mining charges onto a gravitic sled. "The explosives need to be placed in the station's power core. When the Korthak breach the outer hull, the resulting detonation will look like a reactor overload." They made their way through the station's maintenance tunnels, Marcus leaning heavily on Princess Lyreli for support. His condition was deteriorating rapidly. The stress and exertion were pushing his weakened body beyond its limits. "There's something else you need to know," he said as they reached the power core chamber. "The reason Queen Seraphine was so desperate to keep me wasn't just about the plague. Human intelligence believes the Devourers are already present in this sector of the galaxy." Lyreli nearly dropped the charges she was carrying. "Here, in Zephyrian space?" "The Korthak raids aren't random," Marcus explained, beginning to wire the explosives. They're testing your defenses, gathering biological samples, preparing the way. The Devourers probably promised them enhanced warriors and advanced technology in exchange for their cooperation. Then my mother was right to be desperate, the princess said quietly. She was trying to save our species. By the wrong methods, Marcus replied. The only way to fight the Devourers is through cooperation between species. Isolation and secrecy just make their job easier. The sound of cutting tools echoed through the station as the Korthak raiders began breaching the hull. Marcus finished placing the charges and activated the timer. They had 5 minutes to reach their ship and escape the blast radius. As they hurried back through the corridors, Princess Lorelei suddenly stopped. Wait. If your blood can cure the withering plague, and if the plague is really a devourer weapon, then you could save my entire species. At the cost of my own life, Marcus pointed out. The amount of blood needed to treat an entire population would kill me within days. But if we could synthesize it somehow, find a way to replicate the antibodies. Marcus shook his head. Human scientists have been trying for decades. The treatment is tied to living metabolism. It can't be artificially reproduced. They reached their ship with 2 minutes to spare. As Marcus collapsed into the pilot's seat, Princess Lorelei took over the launch sequence. She had become surprisingly competent with human technology during their short time together. There might be another way, she said as they cleared the asteroid field. Zephyrian medical technology works differently than yours. Instead of trying to synthesize your blood, we could potentially create a symbiotic organism that would produce the necessary antibodies. The mining station exploded behind them in a brilliant flash that lit up the asteroid field. Several Korthak ships were caught in the blast, their hulls cracked open by the shockwave. The surviving raiders would report that their quarry had died in the explosion. A symbiotic organism? Marcus asked, intrigued despite his exhaustion. It would require volunteers, Lorelei explained. Zephyrians who would accept a modified version of your antibodies into their biological systems. They would become carriers, able to pass the immunity to others through close contact. That sounds dangerous. What if something went wrong? More dangerous than extinction? She countered. My people are dying, Marcus. In a few generations, we'll be nothing but a memory. And if the Devourers are really coming, we need every advantage we can get. Marcus considered this as they traveled toward the edge of the system. The princess was right. Desperate times called for desperate measures. But he also knew that genetic modification of an entire species carried risks that couldn't be predicted. There's a human outpost in the Centauri system, he said finally. If you're willing to come with me, we could present your proposal to the Terran Medical Council. They have experience with devourer countermeasures. Princess Lorelei looked back toward her homeworld, now just a distant point of light. I can never return to Ethermere. By helping you escape, I've committed treason against the crown. My mother will have branded me a criminal by now. Then you'll have to find a new purpose, Marcus said gently. Maybe helping forge an alliance between our species. The Devourers are coming whether we're ready or not. Our only chance is to stand together. As they engaged the faster-than-light drive, Marcus felt a strange sense of hope despite everything they had been through. Princess Lorelei had given up everything to do what she believed was right, and he had found a cause worth fighting for beyond his own survival. But they both knew that convincing their respective governments to cooperate would be the greatest challenge yet. The Devourers had spent decades sowing distrust between species, and overcoming that legacy would require more than good intentions. The war for the galaxy's future was about to begin, and Marcus realized that his unusual blood might be just the first weapon they would need in the battles to come. The Terran Medical Council's headquarters orbited Earth's moon, a massive space station that served as humanity's premier research facility. As Marcus and Princess Lorelei approached in their small ship, they could see dozens of vessels from across human space docked at the station's multiple ports. 3 weeks had passed since their escape from Ethermere. Marcus had recovered much of his strength during the journey, while Lorelei had spent the time learning everything she could about human biology and technology. Her natural intelligence and scientific training made her a quick student. "Are you certain your people will listen to us?" she asked as they entered the docking sequence. Marcus wasn't certain at all. The existence of the Devourers was classified at the highest levels, and bringing an alien into the heart of human medical research would trigger every security protocol in the book. But they had to try. Director Sarah Chen met them at the airlock. flanked by security personnel whose hands rested casually near their weapons. She was a stern woman in her 60s with the kind of sharp intelligence that had made her one of humanity's leading experts on xenobiology. "Captain Kane," she said formally, "you've caused quite a stir by going missing for over a month. And bringing an unauthorized alien to this facility violates about 17 different regulations." "Director Chen," Marcus replied, stepping protectively in front of Princess Lirelei, "I need to speak with you privately about the Devourer situation. This is Princess Lirelei of the Zephyrian Empire, and she has information that could change everything." Chen's expression shifted slightly at the mention of the Devourers. She studied the alien princess with new interest, noting the exhaustion and determination in her large eyes. "Very well. Conference Room 7, maximum security protocols. You have 30 minutes to convince me not to have you both arrested." The conference room was a sterile white chamber with no windows and sophisticated scanning equipment built into the walls. Princess Lirelei looked around nervously as the security systems activated. But Marcus gave her an encouraging nod. "Director," Marcus began, "the Zephyrians are suffering from what they call the Withering Plague. Based on the timeline and symptoms, I believe it's a Devourer biological weapon." Chen leaned forward in her chair. "Explain." Princess Lirelei spoke for the first time, her accented English careful and precise. "My people began dying 50 years ago. Our natural healing abilities failed, our lifespans shortened, our reproduction rates dropped. We estimate complete extinction within 2 centuries. "And you believe this is connected to the Devourers? How?" Chen asked. Marcus rolled up his sleeve, showing the pale scars where the Zephyrians had repeatedly drawn his blood. "My antibodies don't just protect against Devourer absorption. They actively counteract the plague. Princess Lirelei has proposed a symbiotic solution that could save her species and create a powerful ally against the coming invasion." For the next hour, they presented everything they had learned. Lirelei showed holographic recordings of the plague's effects on her people, while Marcus provided details about the Korthak collaboration with the Devourers and the failed attempt to use his blood as a commodity. Director Chen listened without interruption, occasionally making notes on her tablet. When they finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "If what you're telling me is true," she said finally, "then the Devourer threat is more advanced than we realized. They're not just probing isolated systems, they're conducting coordinated biological warfare across multiple sectors." "The symbiotic approach could work," Lirelei added earnestly. "Zephyrian biology is naturally adaptive. With proper modification, we could create carriers who would be immune to both the plague and Devourer absorption. These carriers could then pass immunity to others through controlled exposure." Chen stood and walked to the wall display, bringing up classified files that made Princess Lirelei's eyes widen. The data showed Devourer probe activities across the galaxy, patterns of biological attacks, and the slow but steady expansion of their influence. "The problem," Chen said, "is that creating such a symbiotic organism would require resources and approval from the highest levels of government. And bringing the Zephyrian Empire into our defense plans would mean revealing the Devourer threat to a new species. They already know about it," Marcus pointed out. "They just don't understand what they're facing." "There's something else," Princess Lirelei said quietly. "My mother, Queen Seraphine, wasn't just trading with the Korthak for protection. She was trying to find a way to make contact with whatever power was behind them. She believed that negotiation was possible." Chen turned sharply. "The Devourers don't negotiate. They consume. But what if they've evolved beyond simple consumption?" Lirelei suggested. "What if they're trying to create a hybrid civilization, incorporating the best traits of each species they encounter?" The idea was terrifying in its implications. If the Devourers had moved beyond simple destruction to selective incorporation, it would change humanity's entire understanding of the threat they faced. "I need to contact Admiral Morrison," Chen said, referring to the head of humanity's anti-Devourer task force. "This conversation has gone beyond medical consultation into strategic planning." As they waited for the Admiral's arrival, Marcus found himself studying Princess Lirelei with new appreciation. She had given up everything she had ever known to pursue a desperate plan to save her species. Her courage reminded him why he had risked his life to save her in the first place. Admiral Morrison arrived within the hour, a grizzled military veteran whose cybernetic implants marked him as a veteran of the early Devourer conflicts. He listened to their presentation with the focused attention of someone who understood the stakes involved. The symbiotic proposal has merit, he admitted when they finished. But implementing it would require the full cooperation of the Zephyrian government. Are you prepared to return to your homeworld and convince them to join our cause? Princess Lyrelei straightened, her royal bearing evident despite her exhaustion. I am branded a traitor by my mother's regime, but there are others who would listen. Scientists, military leaders, even some members of the Royal Council who disagreed with the Korthak alliance. It would be dangerous, Admiral Morrison warned. If you're captured, both of our species lose a valuable asset. If we do nothing, both of our species face extinction, she replied firmly. Marcus felt a surge of pride in the alien princess who had become his unlikely partner. I'll go with her, he said. My blood bought us this chance. I'll see it through to the end. Director Chen smiled for the first time since they had arrived. Then we'll give you the best support we can. A stealth ship, medical equipment, and a small team of specialists. But understand, this mission is entirely unofficial. If you're caught, humanity will deny any knowledge of your activities. As they prepared to leave the medical station, Marcus realized that their story was far from over. They were about to attempt something unprecedented, forging an alliance between species while simultaneously developing a biological countermeasure to an enemy that threatened all life in the galaxy. The blood that had saved Princess Lyrelei's life was about to become the foundation for a new kind of warfare, one fought with science and cooperation rather than weapons and conquest. Whether they succeeded or failed, the galaxy would never be the same. And somewhere in the dark spaces between the stars, the Devourers continued their patient advance, unaware that their greatest prey was finally beginning to understand the true nature of the threat they faced.